Hello, Abnormal Investigations. Thanks for listening and thanks for tuning in to yet another encounter. I want to thank you all for your support for bringing Hunter home. The court date gets closer and closer, and we are excited and know that he's going to be home soon, and we cannot wait. So, let's get into this one, guys. What I'm about to tell you is very true. Only two other people know about it, one being my wife, the other being a friend that was with me. I'd like to give a little backstory of me, so maybe you can understand my skills and abilities. I grew up hunting and fishing. I was taught from the age that I could understand to respect wildlife, nature, and all the nature's creatures. I've hunted with the greatest teachers and studied their habits as to what makes them as good as they are. My family is of Native American descent, and our teachings have been passed down throughout the generations. I am often requested to guide people on new land that they purchase or lease for hunting because of my abilities to read wildlife signs. I say all of this so you can understand that not much scares me in the woods and water. On the evening of November 12th, 2005, I was as scared as I've ever been. My friend and I were on an evening deer hunt on a very old farm in the middle of Georgia. My friend was complaining about trail cameras going missing, so after the hunt we were going to hang around and watch to see if anyone was snooping around and stealing his cameras. The hunt was not very good. In fact, it was lousy. It was unseasonably cold, and the sky was perfectly clear, and the bright moon, not quite as full as it was the night before, was coming up. Legal hunting times had ended, so I was waiting at the base of my stand to listen for my friend's truck to come down the road to get me. After a few minutes, I heard him honk the horn. The area I was in was an old cutout bowl-shaped depression where an abandoned mine used to be. There's a natural spring that flows out of the mine, and I remember how eerily quiet it was, and that the only sound to be heard was the water trickling in the spring coming out of that mine. I squatted down and got a drink of water and began my hike out of the woods. After walking about 200 yards, I came to the old trail that bordered a dense pine thicket and the hardwoods where the mine is. I stopped for a minute to shuffle my backpack and to change the arm I carried my rifle on. I froze in place. When I stopped, I heard footsteps continue for 3 to 4 more steps and then stop. I carry a pistol and a rifle due to the areas I hunt are known to have wild hogs and coyotes. I took my pen light and clipped it to the bill of my hat. I checked my pistol and made sure that everything was copacetic and that it was ready to go. This wasn't hog steps that I heard, and it was not coyotes. Whatever it was big and had the stride of a man, slowly, as if it was stalking a deer. I began to walk. When you stalk hunt, you make 4 to 5 carefully placed steps and stop to survey the area for several minutes while looking and listening for movement. The light on my cap was not turned on at this point. If you have a good moonlight and you're adjusted to it, and you keep the light off and trust your eyes and ears. That way you're not just glowing in the woods. I didn't hear or see anything. I stayed still for several minutes. I stalked 5 long quiet steps and stopped again. At this point, I was over 10 yards away from my first stopping point. I froze. I could hear breathing and what sounded like what I could only explain as a large dog or a bear sniffing for my scent. That huff huff sniff sniff sound a dog makes when he knows you have his favorite treat. Think about that for a minute. So my friend and I, I'll call him Dwight as to not reveal his name, have played some crazy pranks on each other over the years. I stood there and said, "Dwight, what are you doing, man? I'm ready to go." All I heard was a very low guttural growl. Immediately I stalked in a strafing position across the path of my pistol. Drawn and pointed back down the path from the direction I came from. In this direction I heard the growl. I knew I was being hunted. I carry a Glock Model 20 10mm in one hand, a Bowie knife on my belt, and a .270 Winchester on my back. I was prepared. I made my way quietly up the opposite side of the path toward where Dwight was waiting. I could hear his engine running, and I could hear footsteps getting closer. I stopped and listened briefly, and I could hear the footsteps in a very thick pine thicket. It is hard for a decent dog to track its game. That was the only tactic I had, and I used it. I was now where I could see the glow of Dwight's headlights up in the path. I raised my pistol and fired 3 times in rapid succession, signaling to Dwight that I was in distress. And I bolted up the path in a full sprint, branches and limbs cracking behind me, and I heard this god-awful growl say, yep, it spoke. It said, "Get out." What I heard was a mix of human voice and the deepest predator growl I've ever heard. 20 yards from Dwight's truck, and I see muzzle flash and hear the crack of a high-powered rifle. Dwight is leaned up on the hood of his truck and shooting in my direction. I hear a deep scream and a howl, but I didn't look back. I kept running in Dwight's truck. We jumped in with the windows up and the doors locked and pistols sitting on our laps. Dwight is looking down the path in shock. I asked him, "What is it?" He doesn't answer. I shook him and he points down the path. I say, "I see yellowish green glowing eyes standing just a bit over 6 foot on the left side of the path, and a dark figure of a man standing on 2 feet covered in hair. That is as black as the darkest night. It squats down, and it looks like it's licking its wound, and raises back up and then smashes an oak tree with 6 inches across with its hand. The tree doesn't fall, but we both saw bark and chips fly from the tree. In the light, we could see it looking at us in a standoff. With its lips rolled up, you could clearly see its ears and teeth. It looked like an old man. One fang was broken, and part of the ear was missing. Dwight backed out slowly. I kept my eyes in the direction to where we had seen this creature. The next day, Dwight and I took different rifles and went right back to the spot where we had last seen this creature. We found the tree, and it was smashed, the bark off of it. There was a bit of blood on the ground as well as hair. I took samples of the blood and all the hair I could find. A weird thing happened while we were there. The old man who owned the property and his helper pulled up. The helper said that the old man asked that we not come back and hunt. Dwight was the original person who got the permission. We had done a lot of fence repair to get the permission. He started to get the old man's truck, and the helper stopped him. The helper said, "Mr. So-and-so got hit by one of his bulls yesterday, and he ain't feeling well at all. He asked me to bring him down here and ask you fellas not to come back and to be nice about it, but he don't want no one else here." The helper then handed Dwight $500 and handed me $200 for the work we did. We got our deer stands out, never found another camera, and never went back to this day. We did get word that the old man's nephew, when he angrily told Dwight that the old man died a week later due to his injury from the bull. The nephew did extend an offer to hunt there again, but we refused. The nephew made a smart comment about that's probably for the best. I don't want to say how all this ties in together. Use your imagination, and you probably have a good idea of what I'm thinking, Mike. What are your thoughts on this? Wow. Well, if you were to use your imagination, which that's all I'm doing, this is just an imagination, just an opinion, then you would think that the old man was possibly the creature that you saw in the woods, and from your gunshot, he perished. But then, a part of me has trouble believing in these full transformations. I'm not saying they don't happen because, again, I don't know. I'm just saying that from the way I think and the way it hits me as I have trouble thinking of these full transformations. But if it does happen, then there's a good possibility that the old man was actually what he's seen in the woods. And if that is actually a possibility, that these transformations do happen, I may actually know somebody that's able to do this, and it may answer some questions at my granny's, but I'll go more into that later as I find out more information on it. It's a very interesting story, and I'm glad that you all didn't go back to the property to hunt, just in case what was it, the nephew or the grandkid was to think that you were part of it, that they didn't try to hurt you to get revenge, because I know how traditional thinking and, you know, the old ways, some people believe in those ways, and if they thought that you actually did hurt their grandfather, then you might be a target on that property. So it's probably best you don't go back to that property. I think you all done the right thing. I think at least it's a very interesting and mysterious encounter that you shared. I'm glad that y'all made it out of there okay, and I'm sure that y'all will never forget that night. But thank you for sharing this with me. I appreciate you sending it in. And until next time, guys, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner, and we'll see you on the next one.